think that we can try to have everyone settled. Ideally, we would like all the colleagues to come closer to the seats here, those colleagues that are sitting at the back. Good morning once again, colleagues. My name is Mzwane Lenchwanti, and I will be the program director for this 7th post-budget speech discussion that is being hosted at Unisa by the Department of Economics in collaboration with the accounting department, or it's a collaboration between the College of Economics and Management Sciences as well as the College of Accounting Sciences. Our budget speech discussion today is themed South Africa's G20, being efficient, effective, and resilient in turbulent times. And indeed, the times have been turbulent, and we're going to hear how our budget speech that was tabled on Wednesday sort of fits into our national agenda, but also the international agenda. I'm not alone here. I'm with Ms. Lorraine, who is going to also introduce herself today, and will be able to then introduce Dr. Masichaba, who will give a welcome address.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ms. Lorraine Nesongori, and I am also your program director for today. Just a little bit of house rules. If anyone needs water, water is available at the back. If you need to use the bathroom, it is located outside on your right. And to ensure the flow of the session, may we please keep our cell phones on silent so that we do not disrupt the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lorraine, for the house rules. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Masashaba, who is going to give us the welcoming address. Dr. Masachaba is currently serving as the acting executive dean in the College of Economics and Management Sciences, and has a dynamic professional background encompassing roles as a data scientist, a banker, as well as the educator. With her roots in a small village near Polokwane, her academic journey is marked by a steadfast passion for mathematics, which later evolved into a profound expertise in decision sciences. Prof. Masachaba's career trajectory has seen her transition from the hospitality sector at Unisa's cafeteria to high-speed paced world of investment banking, and ultimately back to the realms of the academic space, where she has found her true calling. Her academic and professional endeavors are united by a common theme, a commitment to using quantitative methods to address and solve real-world problems. Her work as a data scientist and educator is driven by a deep belief in Africa's potential to achieve self-sufficiency in food production and the ambitious goal of eradicating hunger within our lifetime. By applying mathematical and statistical techniques to optimize business, educational, and governance systems, she aims to make a significant impact in society. Her leadership and teaching encourages students and colleagues alike to leverage data and analytics to drive positive change, emphasizing the practical application of mathematical skills in addressing economic and societal challenges. Her vision extends beyond the academic sphere, aiming to bridge the gap between theoretical mathematics and tangible economic solutions, thereby contributing to a more equitable and sustainable futures. Dr. Masishaba, thank you so much.
Professor Puleng Linkabula and the MENCOM team in absentia, Dr. Tongwani and the CAS team, Professor Mlaudzi, the Deputy Executive Dean and the team, Professor de Klerk, Ntatendo, Dr. Ndo, Dr. Haji, Hosi Magadani, Dr. Chuma, Melorain, Dr. Mzwa, all guests, our students and participants, Tobela. Our discussion today focuses on particular and suitable critical theme, South Africa's G20 presidency, being efficient, effective, and resilient in turbulent times. Considering what we have now, the global economic uncertainties, the shifting geopolitical dynamics, and the complex socio-economic challenges, South Africa's leadership within the G20 is not only an honor, but is a profound responsibility. As we reflect on this theme, we recognize the pivotal role universities play in supporting and advancing the G20 objectives. Universities are uniquely positioned not just as institutions of higher learning, but as a powerful agents of social and economic change. Our collective contributions through research, innovation, policy development, and capacity building can direct impactly the effectiveness and the resilience of national and international economic frameworks. The concept of universities being perceived as ivory towers, isolated from societal needs, has been a topic of discussion. And the UNESCO document titled Regional Cooperation in Higher Education in Southern Africa notes that universities have been historically prided themselves on being just ivory towers, but emphasizes the need for us to engage. Dr. Naledi Pandor challenged us, and she says we need to have a broader discourse, to be more engaged, so that we remove this ivory tower mentality. I'm challenging you. On Monday evening, Professor Dr. Tlongwani, myself, and other team members, we attended a meeting with Minister Stella Ndabeni, and she is asking us to form task teams to be involved in the G20 discussions. I'm proud that Dr. Mzoa has already started, and I know that some of you have, but we need to be out there, we need to write about them, and we must say what we do. So please check the G20 calendar and see where you fit in. And indeed, as a University of the Land, we serve as a hub for creating knowledge that drives sustainable economic growth. And we provide innovation in response to global crisis. Our commitment to evidence-based research and education equips future leaders. This year, we also celebrate the 30-year anniversary of the Beijing Declaration. These two colleges, we've always complained that the catalytic niche areas are dislocated from our fields of specialization. Challenge number 2, let each of us write a paper on the womanist Bosadi feminism theorization for this year in our field, but include women feminism or Bosadi. We look forward to robust discussions. Let's embrace this opportunity to explore solutions. Thank you so much for your presence in person, virtual, and some of them will be listening to the recordings. Together, let's continue to define tomorrow by shaping informed decisions and fostering sustainable change today. Ladies and gentlemen and others, my name is Mantepu Maschaba Kengwana Masemola, and on behalf of our mother, our leader, our principal and vice chancellor, Professor Puleng Kabula, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this important Unisa's post-budget speech deliberations. You are welcome, Daming.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masechaba, for that welcome. As in Xhosa ngoku besizawuthi ungakhulula ibhatyi zakho uzibeke ecaleni, and this is also important because of the type of discussions that we are going to have. We are really faced with a lot of challenges, and South Africa is hosting the G20 presidency, where we are putting national agendas as well as international agendas on the platform, and we are really calling this space, academic institutions such as Unisa, which are really leaders in the African continent, to catalyze those niches that Prof. Masechaba is speaking about in making sure that we leverage sustainable futures. Now we're going to introduce our panelists, which are going to give us insights into the budget speech, and they will be able to then inform us of the different things that have come out of the budget and how to pave better futures for the different households in our homes. We have seen that the highlight of this year's budget speech has been a rise in the VAT, which, I mean, we've seen a VAT increase recently in South Africa, and this trajectory must be worrying for households, more especially knowing the circumstances of households in South Africa that are faced with competing needs. but we've also seen no changes in personal income taxes and capital gains. We are still faced with an escalating problem of debt, and this again is not a problem of South Africa only. Many countries are also faced with this challenge in Africa, and when we speak about G20, we are also speaking about a stronger African Union and a stronger African voice in tackling these issues, particularly of debt. And we must be able to confront the debt challenges, but always thinking about the human impact that it has, particularly on education as well as health. And we must also then look at other alternative budgeting mechanisms, which I think this year we've been caught off guard when National Treasury sort of proposed the VAT increase, that we're not able to engage robustly, particularly as academic institutions, to provide alternative budgeting issues. We must talk about the cost of capital, and this has really been a problem which has been affecting infrastructure development as well as just energy transitions. But also South Africa and Africa as well as the world does face an issue of youth unemployment. We do have a problem of people that are not in education, employment as well as training. This really confronts many economies in the world, and we must find ways to deal with this to drive sustainable and inclusive economic growth. But again, to echo Dr. Mashaba's words, this can also only happen if we have investment in research and development to make sure that we find robust solutions into paving sustainable and just futures. So having said that, colleagues, I'm going to ask Dr. Lorraine to just begin to introduce our facilitator for the, I'm professing, to introduce our facilitator for the session. We are going to call our facilitators, and as we introduce them, we would like them to come up on stage one by one. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Nchanti, and of course the prophecy that I am now Dr. Lorraine. Ladies and gentlemen, we are actually surrounded by very knowledgeable experts this morning, and they will be helping us to unpack the budget speech. And first on the list, I'm honored to introduce Professor Benedine de Klerk, who will also facilitate the coming session. Professor de Klerk is an NRF rated researcher in the College of Accounting Sciences at the University of South Africa. Her research interests regarding pathways towards economic and financial well-being provides the platform for local and international collaboration, as she is the member of the OECD INFE Research Committee as well as the G53 group. Both international research networks consisting of researchers across the world focusing on the improvement of economic and financial well-being. Furthermore, she is an associate member of the Center of Personal Financial Well-being at Aston University and a research fellow at the University of Birmingham. She is also a member of the South African National Committee on Financial She is also a member of the South African National Committee on the Financial Education, a national committee chaired by the National Treasury focused on implementing the national policy on financial education. Her personal research interest is embedded in the quintuple helix innovation model, which allows for collaboration between government, academia, business, and society towards sustainability. Her research is aimed at empowering South Africans to become financially and tax literate. To date, Professor de Klerk's research outputs include several research reports, conference proceedings, both local and international, and academic articles. A round of applause for Professor de Klerk.
Colleagues, I've got an honor and a privilege of introducing Ms. Mpho Molupiane, who assumed the role of Chief Economist at Alexander Forbes on the 1st of December 2023. Her responsibilities include formulating the macroeconomic strategy for the entity and identifying significant economic opportunities to positively influence the business, benefit clients, and enhance investment processes. With extensive experience in macroeconomic research within the finance and public sectors, Mpho previously served as a senior economist at ABSA, overseeing economic research for multiple multiple African economies. Her earlier roles include serving as an economist at RMB, focusing on the South African market, as well as positions at National Treasury as well as Standard Bank. Outside of work, Ms. Mpo is a mother and enjoys spending her free time hiking, running, as well as traveling. Her commitment to delivering exceptional insights and strategies aligns with Alexandra Forbes' vision and its intent to make a meaningful impact. Ms. Mpo, we are really privileged to have you here with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've got the honor to introduce Dr. Mthokozisi Chuma. Dr. Mthokozisi Chuma is a policy specialist on inclusive growth at UNDP USA. He was previously the chief sector expert at the National Planning Commission, NPC, of South Africa, where he researched to support national development planning and mobilize public engagement with the National Development Plan, addressing issues like economic development, trade, poverty, inequality, MSMEs, infrastructure, SOEs, and climate change. Before joining the NPC in 2014, Dr. Chuma was the head of institutional research at the University of the Witwatersrand, where he also lectured in economics. His previous roles included Deputy Director, Industrial Policy at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and Operational Specialist on Revenue Forecasting and Modeling at the South African Revenue Services. Dr. Chuma holds a PhD in economics from the University of the Witwatersrand with research interests in econometrics, monetary economics, international trade, poverty, inequality, and MSME finance. Dr. Chuma, please come and join us. Thank you.
Colleagues, let me welcome our very own Dr. Eliphas Ndo. Dr. Eliphas Ndo holds a PhD in economics. He lectures various economic courses at the Department of Economics here at Unisa, at the College of Economic and Management Sciences. Before joining Unisa, Dr. Ndo has worked for about 11 years as a research economist at the South African Reserve Bank in its Economic Research and Statistics Department. And the South African Reserve Bank, he also worked in the Monetary Policy Research Unit, Public Finance, as well as the Financial Analysis Unit, Labor and Business Cycles Unit, and Research and Modeling Unit. He also lectured various economic courses at the School of Economic and Business Sciences at Wits Plus at the University of the Witwatersrand for about 11 years. He has published articles in international journals and working papers at the South African Reserve Bank, International Monetary Fund, African Development Bank, and Economic Research in Southern Africa. He has authored about 13 books in the economics field of international finance, fiscal policy, monetary economics, labor economics, macroeconomics, financial stability, and macroprudential policy, economic uncertainty, and economic inequality. He has been an economic expert in various medical negligence litigation cases at the various high courts in South Africa. He has contributed various chapters in the Elverston Encyclopedia in monetary policy, financial markets, as well as in banking in 2024. Dr. Ndo, please come to the front.
The next panelist was actually with us in our previous session, and he is Mr. Arjundini Magadani, CA. Mr. Arjundini is a qualified chartered accountant with more than 16 years experience and has been operating as a tax specialist at senior level, both in private and public sector. He has extensive experience in the tax consulting environment. He has also acquired experience in the public sector as a tax auditor for the South African Revenue Service. During his time at SARS, he was involved in the audit of tax affairs of the companies ranging from small to large companies, and this gave him an exposure in the various industries. He advises and/or assists clients on corporate tax, corporate restructuring, tax dispute resolutions, tax compliance, tax accounting, cross-border transactions, international tax, tax VAT, dividends taxes and payroll taxes, withholding taxes, and tax training. there's everything tax related. His qualifications include BCom Accounting Sciences from the University of Pretoria, BCom Honours CTA from the University of Natal, MCom in International and Domestic Taxation from the University of Northwest, Certificate in Mining Taxation from Unisa, and an LLB from Unisa. Bo Argentini, ndikhombela, but they were.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lorraine. Our last speaker is Dr. Mutambuli James Haji, who is a recognition of prior learning specialist in the Directorate Instructional Support and Services at Unisa. He has previously worked as a senior lecturer in the Department of Communications within the same institution. Before he joined Unisa, he worked as a lecturer in the Department of Integrated Communication at TUT. He also worked for Nissan South Africa State Information Technology Agency and University of Pretoria. He holds a BCom in Marketing Management, BCom Honours in Communication Management from the University of Pretoria, and a Master of Social Sciences degree and a PhD from the University of Fort Hare. Dr. James Haji, we welcome you. Please come and join us. I would like to hand over to Prof. Benedin, who will facilitate this robust session of esteemed colleagues. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with the College of Economic and Management Sciences, and welcome to all our colleagues here and online. Yes, I've got the easy job. I just asked the questions. They had to do the heavy lifting and really engage with all the information. So we're just going to move from, as the program indicated, we're going to start with our lovely colleague here to set the scene for us, looking at it from a fund management perspective of what is all these uncertainties and how they protect our money and keep it safe for us going forward with no clue what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks. So good luck on that, and we're looking forward to listen. Yeah. You're welcome either to sit or stand, whichever way you are, you're comfortable.
All right, I'm comfortable to sit. Hopefully everybody can hear me, because it is supposed to be sort of an engagement. So from a financial market perspective, we tend to look at the budget with quite a narrow focus. And I'll also just take you through our thought process as well. But we tend to focus on the high level numbers. What is government planning to spend? How are they going to get this money? How much do they need to go to the market to borrow? And what does this mean for long-term debt sustainability? And long-term debt sustainability for us, it's quite important, as you would appreciate that on a monthly basis, you are working, there's pension fund contribution. And some of that money is invested, yes, it is invested in the stock market. Some of that is invested in government bonds. And really, what we worry about when it comes to sustainability of debt is, will debt eventually stabilize, or will it continue rising? If it continues to rise, what does that mean, overall for pensioners? So for instance, if government debt goes bust, it is then going to affect pensioners' livelihoods, because when you then get to your pension age, government then says, I can't pay you back all this money that I've been borrowing from you, so then you need to take a haircut on that investment. So that's why debt sustainability for us is quite important, and that's why that tends to be quite a narrow focus for us. But to just backtrack a bit, when we look at this budget, government told us that they're going to spend 2.6 trillion. So the budget for this current fiscal year, it's 2.6 trillion. And how they're then going to finance that is they will raise revenue of about 2.2 trillion, and 90% of that revenue is coming from taxes. And the bulk of it is coming from personal income tax as well as value added tax. And the remainder is then corporate income tax, and then the other import taxes as well. And then the remainder of the money, they then have to go to the market and borrow. which I'll also come back to. And then where are they going to be spending this money? So they're telling us that about 60% of the 2.6 trillion that they're going to collect, they're then going to spend it towards social services. And when we talk about social services, we talk about everything from education. Remember that government has an education department, so there's teachers which are employed, there's public schools that need to be funded, higher education funding. So the 1.6 trillion is partly going towards that. It also going towards health in the form of public hospitals, medicines. And then they're also telling us that about 10% will then go towards peace and security, and some money as well, about 11% will then go towards economic development. When it comes to economic development, you can think about the spending on investment as well as infrastructure. And then they're then telling us that they have to spend about 14% of the expenditure on debt service costs. Now, that should be worrying for all of us. As you would have heard when I was talking about how much is going towards economic development, which is meant to be growing the economy, only about 11% is going towards that. And a bulk of the expenditure, or not a bulk, but a substantial chunk, 14%, is going towards servicing debt. And if we further look at what that means in terms of the tax revenue we are collecting. So for every 1 rand in taxes that we collect, about 21 cent is actually going towards servicing debt. So, you can tell this trajectory, it is not looking good. And that's why there is a greater focus around fiscal sustainability. When is government going to tighten its belt? When is government going to direct money correctly towards economic development so that we can grow the economy and lift South Africa onto a higher onto a higher growth trajectory, bring more people into the labor market, and that way we can then collect more in terms of revenue instead of just increasing the tax burden as we saw again in this budget. So for us, debt sustainability it's a major thing, and the one particular thing we are worried about in this budget is that despite National Treasury increasing taxes, yes, the increase in terms of VAT is much lower than what the February budget had projected, but it is still substantial. And despite the increase in the tax burden in terms of higher tax revenue, we are worried about debt sustainability because there are still other expenditure pressures which National Treasury did not address in this budget. So if anything, if we don't get the growth forecast that National Treasury is talking about, revenue is going to disappoint. On the expenditure side, there's likely to be some fiscal slippage there. And at the moment, it does seem as if though debt sustainability still remains somewhat elusive. So, that's more or less how the financial market sort of looks at this budget with a very narrow focus on fiscal sustainability.
Thank you very much. Sorry, sir, I'm going to jump here to you and first going to go to Dr. Ndlo, just to give us a little bit of a conversation, looking at still almost on the macro side. We just heard the president visited Johannesburg a week or two ago, putting on its nice clothes to get the city ready for the hosting. And for me, it was almost shocking to hear he was surprised to see what the state of Johannesburg is. And we have this narrative to say in which universe there's a lot of the politicians who live and stay, because that wasn't a shock for the most people staying in Johannesburg. So coming to the point of municipalities, SOUs, all those type of things, we're struggling. We had load shedding, not for many days, and then suddenly we're back. There was a little bit of discussion of Eskom, but now we're moving to Transnet. So your point of how does this budget help us getting stability, giving hope?
Oh, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to also contribute to the discussion regarding the budget. Yes, regarding the state-owned enterprises, I think the interventions that are being proposed, they're going to help a bit in trying to stabilize the finances here. So remember that in economics, when we talk about production function, we need energy as a factor, as an input there, production function here. So in this case, we have to talk more about the ESCOM. ESCOM is still facing big problems, as you have indicated recently that we had load shedding after a long period of time not having that. So ESCOM currently, even though the National Treasury has given it a debt relief program, they are still not meeting some of the conditions met there, included in that debt relief program. And this is becoming a very big problem. Because one of the requirements was that ESCOM should get rid of the ESCOM Finance Company. I think that is a book that has got the mortgages for the employees of ESCOM. They haven't done so far. And once they don't meet conditions there is also a penalty that they cannot get part of the promised part of the package here. So also ESCOM is having a problem here. The problem is that they are not getting enough payments. They're facing problem that is faced by the municipalities. Municipalities, the ESCOM debt that is owed by municipalities has even ballooned. I think from 76 to about 84. So which is also increasing the financial burden on ESCOM meeting the requirements. So as you have heard last year, I think, if I remember correctly, ESCOM losses were about 55 billion last year. And those were following the debates. Part of ESCOM financing comes from the tariffs. And these have to be approved by NESA. And they've been putting in a big percentage of tariffs, and they were not getting that. That is also contributing to the weak balance sheet of ESCOM. So we believe that going forward, as ESCOM is managing to meet some of the requirements, they'll be able to get some bit of relief in form of what they call the payment on debt that is maturing in 2026 as well as in 2028. So I'm just giving that as a high-level summary. And on the municipalities, they're also failing to take advantage of the debt relief program. So the minister, Kavisa, did indicate that there are about 66 distressed municipalities. That is a big number. It's a high concern, because I'm saying this as the director there of the program indicated the situation in Johannesburg there. So 66 municipalities are under distress, and about 107, they are low risk, and about 54, they are classified as medium risk, and about 30 as stable. So these numbers are not good at all. Because the problems that are faced by municipalities here, they are not only related to the skill level, that they don't have employees who are capable of managing the finances. They are also related to political aspect and also the infighting. And the municipalities, most of them, they rely on grants from the provinces. They are not in position to collect property tax and other revenues that they should be collecting here. So we're still having a big problem here. And under the debt relief program, what I can say is that very few municipalities have met the conditions. And as I speak here, I think about, because there are numbers here, so these numbers, only 11 municipalities have succeeded to meet the requirement and got about 1/3 of the debt relief. And about 7 municipalities have been issued with warnings by the National Treasury for failing to adhere to that program. So the number is not good here. And 3 of the municipalities, they are failing, or they are still struggling with the financial management. So the number is not good at all here. And 77 municipalities under debt relief, they are failing to meet the required conditions. And now I mean the required conditions from the debt relief program, because they are not paying the monthly payments to ESCOM here. And they're also failing to collect about 85% of the revenue. That is also a requirement. So we've got a very big problem. So the problems that happen at the municipality level, they also feed into ESCOM. And we need power as an input in production processes. So we are still going to be facing these challenges. Whether we'll be able to achieve the growth projected by National Treasury of about maybe 1.9%, of which I think that is an optimistic view after reading the numbers and after going through what the Minister of Corporate Governance, Mr. Chavisa, said. There is still a very big problem at municipality levels. That's where a lot of development should be happening. But given the numbers, it seems we are still far off from realizing this. So concerning Transnet, those who have been following the GDP growth, the last quarter, that is quarter on quarter, it was 0.6%. And the annual GDP in 2024, it was also 6%, 0.6%. So there are problems here. If we're talking about 1.9, I see that is extremely far, because the sectors that contributed there, one of them was agriculture, which is seasonal. The other one was trade. Those who are fans of the Black Friday and those ones who have got their bonuses in December, they enjoy Christmas shopping. So those are the sectors that have been driving economic growth in 2024, in the last part of it. So I don't see that also being happening this bit, but it might happen later on. So on the Transnet part of it, there were a lot of sectors were dragging down growth there. And I think mining was one of them because of the problems with logistics and port-related issues. So if Transnet does abide and respect what the National Treasury is doing, I think if there's an improvement in the port handling facilities, we might see a small tick up in the economic growth, maybe to above 1%. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I think it is challenging times for us, but I think that hopefully we'll get to some solutions at the end of the time. We're filtering further through, and I'm going to come down to us as workers, because we're all in that category as well. And we do have a representative here that can talk on behalf of the workers. So your impact, sir, if we look at it from how friendly, how conducive, how a building is this in giving the challenges that workers are struggling. We've got the big municipality bill, they get a 5.5% increase. Is that fair? Is it fair to us paying for that? So your point, if you look at it from a worker's perspective and a labor union. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Dr. Masichaba. Yes, thank you. I wanted to look at me. You know why? Because I'm short. Let me break the rules. Dr. Masichaba, I think going forward, these events like this shouldn't be signed off if the gender parity is still like this. We have to be deliberate about gender parity. It must not just be talks. For example, as the representative of workers, I'm willing to release myself from the panel if it's gonna go like this. Because we need our sisters' voices. And if management will just continue as business as usual, it's not gonna work. Even though we really spent our bonuses as well last month, did we? Yes. So if it's gonna increase economic growth, that growth will be coming from Unisa. South Africa used to be described on Marxist lenses as a colonization of a special type. You still remember? Hence, you must not be surprised when we see events like World Cup, 2010 World Cup coming here. We see events like the G20 coming here. So if you look at our history, you will see that our colonizers were not using a remote control. They were here. It's a colonization of a special type. That's why we are far much ahead of other African countries, if I may say, because our colonization was totally different from what was happening probably in Zimbabwe, in Namibia, though Namibia used to fall within the government or the control of the South African government. So I wanted to say that as an introduction, to say that being a participant in G20, it means that somehow we are playing a global stage and we must not undermine ourselves. Yes, internally we will differ every now and then, but we are indeed a privileged country. And again, where is the dean from College of Accounting Sciences? W- yeah, she's instructing you to come down. We can safely say that this budget was never plagiarized. Am I correct? There was back and forth of editing every now and then, and there were some political fights between different parties. But the reason why we are talking about plagiarism, my sister from Alexandra Folk, is that as the university, in most instances, we accuse students of plagiarizing. Am I correct? But this budget, it was never a copy and paste. It was withdrawn, it came back. It means it's original, if one can say something like that. Obviously, as workers, we are disappointed at the 0.5% hike in VAT. And we know that the poor will be affected most. For example, they will not afford food, electricity, and transport, which Dr. Ndo was talking about. And probably using economics lens, an increase in VAT will increase inflation. Am I correct? Okay. So it's not good. And however, we appreciate the increase of the basket on zero-rated product, including some vegetables, dairy product, etc. And we also welcome the freeze on fuel prices. And those are the taxes, not the fuel price per se, but the tax on fuel prices. I will skip some of the things. As workers, we are impressed by the 22 billion on public employment programs. Our students are suffering, Dr. Maschaba. They can't get internship programs. So this youth employment program is going to help removing our students from the streets. We also noted the 3 billion on missing model for NEFSAS. So it means the more we get students, the more we are assured of our jobs. And Dr. Tlongwane, you know that we use the ACRAM points. So if we are not having students who are funded through NEFSAS here, we might lose our jobs because we use that ACRAM points. So we need stability at NEFSAS so that we can secure our jobs. We also welcome the SRD, but as workers, we need a basic income grant, not SRD. It's not enough. We also welcome the money given to SARS. I think it's around, in fact, SARS collected 2.2 trillion, I think in 2024, but we are worried about 150,000 potential taxpayers who are not registered. As to who are those, the experts like Dr. Ndo must assist us, because we need more people to pay for this tax. But I suspect the BEE beneficiaries are the biggest culprits. And some international companies who evade tax, we are aware of them. But our own BEE beneficiaries must be dealt with harshly. I've seen in some news channels that a certain team is being sold because a person was a BEE beneficiary and now is unable to sustain the team through the efficiency of SARS. And we also welcome the 500 million allocated for SARS to deal with customs and compliance issues. So we hope that we will have more money through SARS, but in conclusion, especially on the recent developments, I think those who are following news, they would know that our soldiers are coming back. Can you clap for that? Yes, it will take time for them to get here because of the difficulties the M23 is doing in that part of the world. But I think we should also elaborate the fact that soldiers, when they are deployed in those countries, they help the influx of undocumented nationals. So if there is peace in DRC, they will never flock to our country. Am I correct? So as much as, yes, some of our soldiers lost their lives, but the stability is far much better than leaving that country unattended, because they will flock to our country, and we are these very same people who will complain that these people are being sustained in our hospitals through our tax money. You know, it's very easy to complain in that manner, but when we deploy the army that side, we complain, especially when they die. But I thought some of the documents which they sign, the soldiers, is to also risk to die. Am I correct? Hmm? Okay, on the international front, this morning I heard that the European Union and the European Commission, they are pumping up around, is it 4 billion euros, am I correct? So somebody must keep his own whatever, we will keep our own. I'm not going to mention names, but we should not be worried about our in agricultural products. Anyway, was it Wandile Sihlobo who emphasized the fact that As much as we have got Algoa, most of our products are not going to Algoa. It's a very small percentage. Our biggest agricultural trading partners are African markets, followed by Middle East, I beg your pardon, uh, followed by Middle East, yes, EU, and also Asia. So we must strengthen our relations with other countries, not only to focus on the conditional ALGOA, which USA, when we upset them, they will withdraw it. So I am encouraged by the numbers, and I can rest assure you that if need be, go to one of our harbors, you will never see the fruits getting rotten. They will go to other countries. Be rest assured about that. And it might assist us because as workers, Dr. Masichab, I usually get told that we cannot afford some of our best fruits in South Africa. Am I correct? We export those fruits. So with time and all what is happening in the international front, we hope to can afford some of our best fruits because they will not be exported to a certain country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, interesting with Big Daddy playing around with puppets of us pulling strings this way and that way. But thank you very much for taking us through the workers' position and then still bringing it very close to home as taxpayers. How does this budget have influenced us, touched us? Dr. Raji spoke about taxes and the inflation impact, and I think that's part of the leverage that the minister is trying to use. So it's hiding, it's almost as inflation and not bracket creep. So I'm going to ask our tax experts in the room just to talk us a little bit through from your side, when you look at it from the practitioner side, of how does that work in your client's perspective. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good morning, colleagues. I hope you can hear me. Dr. Raji said there was no plagiarism on the preparation of the budget, but looks like there was difficulties in making it balance for accounting purposes. So that's why there was a back and forth. I think this was a very difficult budget for the minister. This is the first budget that we are receiving under the new governance that we are facing. This is a new the budget that we are getting under the government of national unity after the national election did not give us the outright winner. So it was expected that there would be tensions, or surely there would be conflict of priorities when the budget gets prepared. Because even now we're not sure if it's going to be passed, because everyone now, as I say, in the past, the ruling party will just meet and discuss it in their corners, and then it'll come to us, and it will easily pass without being scrutinized. Now there's a lot of scrutiny. Even people who are not tax specialists, they are giving opinions on the VAT treatment of certain items. So I think the biggest, as you know, the biggest talking point was the VAT hike. The hike sparked debate, which was initially sparked by what we termed the budget that never was. The budget that never was proposed a 2% increase, 2 percentage point increase in VAT, and that caused an uproar in the country, especially where the cost of living it's high, where unemployment it's very high, where there's a weak economic growth. But with the current budget, this has been revised by 1%, which is going to be split into 2 years, with the half percentage point coming into effect from May 2025, and the other ones coming 11 months later. So this, to be honest, is going to cost. Is going to contribute to an increased cost of living in the country. You spoke about the impact on inflation, And you said, I hear that there was a bonus here in in Unisa, so I'll touch on the personal tax as well later on. So this will definitely cause harm to the poorest of the poor. But the government, what they've done, or in an attempt to shield the poor household, they are proposing to extend the zero rating of certain items, meaning that some food items will not be subjected to this VAT hike, or with so it will be zero rated. But when you look at the proposal that that they've put across, it does not make sense. We're still going to wait for the tax laws amendment bill to check how the regulation is going to be finalized. So they are talking about zero rating certain portion of meat. For example, if the suppliers cuts chicken, for example, drumstick will be at 16%, and chicken livers will be at zero rate, and it's going to cause problem because now you're not going to have a mixed portion. Because now, so I think the proposal does not make sense as it stands now, because the different parts of organs of animals now going to be charged VAT at a different rate, and it's now going to spark another debate as to what poor household eats, because it looks like now this assumption is that poor household are not entitled to eat chicken drums or some. So it is going to be a problem once, but now it's still a proposal. Once the regulation comes in, maybe there will be comments from the socialists as well to say, if we are targeting nutritious food, then it needs to be the whole portion, not certain portion, because we can't say poor people now needs to eat heads of chickens and chicken feet. That's what is in the proposal, so which is not good at all. I think that's one of the things that the socialists also will just engage on that. Obviously, as tax specialists, now we need to advise poor household when they buy, they need to look at the different types of pieces. If you're going to get, if you're going to go for steak, then you'll pay 15%. Now, if you have to, if you don't want to pay VAT, now we need to advise people to buy mkhudu, for example. So I think that's it on the VAT side, which is an issue that the whole country was discussing, and this. The minister did indicate that he did not do a trade-off between SRD and grant, because some commentators were saying, or some media reports were reporting that he was stuck between keeping the SRD or increasing taxes, increasing the VAT. But looks like he managed to strike a deal, the balance, and now we have this. We still have the SRD, and also the VAT hike. We still gonna wait if the VAT hike is gonna be finalized, because most of the participants in Parliament they experienced displeasure or the discomfort with the VAT proposal. So on the personal income tax, there were no adjustment on the tax brackets, tax credits, and medical credits. No adjustment does not mean that it's not an increase. An adjustment for inflation. So if you have received your inflationary increases, now you will be taxed on those inflationary increase. In the past, those tax tables used to be adjusted so that you get the benefit of having your salaries being adjusted for inflation. So I understand there was a bonus in here at Unisa. So the tax tables are not being adjusted for inflation. So what you would have received or what you have taken home, it now is going to be less than it would have been if the adjustment were made on the tax tables. There were no increases on the corporate tax. The corporate tax still remains at 27%. Although some commentators from certain corners, they would have preferred an increase in corporate tax. I must mention that our corporate tax is regarded as high. as compared to our peer countries. So any adjustment upwards on the corporate tax is going to cause economic harm. We are living in a global economy where we need to be globally competitive. So I think that's the reason why it's not easy for them to touch the corporate tax. The global average is sitting at around 24%. And again, corporate tax is tax that is payable on profit. If the companies are not making profit, at that one you not get anything, unlike the consumption taxes like VAT, where the VAT is straightforward, irrespective of whether you have made a profit or not. One of the good news that we picked up, which it has been indicated by our colleagues, is that there won't be any adjustment on fuel levies. Those are direct benefits that we can easily get, because in the past we'll know every budget there will be adjustment in April on our fuel cost. So this is it's a welcome relief on most of the people. No adjustment is going to be made on fuel levy and road extent fund. And the point that I want to take on is that on the tax to GDP, it's projected to reach an average of 24.3% in the next 3 years. When you look at the average of the OECD countries, this is low. OECD countries tax to GDP is sitting at 34%, and this is testament to what the Commissioner of SARS alluded to earlier on in the year, that there is a tax gap in the country in the region of 9 billion. Tax gap is just the difference between tax collectible by law and what SARS is actually collecting. As Dr. Haji has already done his desktop research, that some BE beneficiaries are not paying tax and some multinationals, but that is not there's no research that has been done on that, and SARS doesn't currently lack capacity to chase this 900 billion. So what they've done is they've asked for funding. Initially in the budget, they got 3.5 to chase this 900 billion. That we desperately need. So if everyone pays tax, there won't be need for any adjustment that needs to be made on VAT. Following that, I think there was a unpleasant conversation or recorded conversation between the minister and the commissioner, and that resulted in him giving him additional 4 billion. I don't know if it was maybe he was apologizing. So SARS now is being capacitated in the region of 7 billion to go and chase the 900 billion tax gap that we currently have. Some countries, especially the OECD countries, the tax gap is very, very low. And if you look at countries like Australia, the tax gap is low, and it's mainly because of the model that they use. Also, the taxpayers, they are willing to pay tax. There's what you call the voluntary tax compliance model that they have, which most of the taxpayers they bought into it. SARS has copied that model. It's encouraging willing taxpayers to pay tax. They have tried to make it easy for people to make tax. A lot of compliance now. They are on online. Introduction of e-filing was one of those things that has made easy. So, but now what they need to do is to strengthen the enforcement capacity. That's the reason why they need funding to employ not only accountants. Now they need to employ IT specialists that will look at the data, so that it's not going to be easy for anyone going forward to evade or to even to avoid tax. I think that's just about it from my side. Okay, and just to mention the last point, there were no major announcement of significant tax increases. CGT still remains the same. Dividend tax has not been adjusted. Donation tax has not been adjusted. They fall within what you call wealth tax. I know most of the people, they say the way are proposing that uh, to avoid, to increase tax revenue, we need to introduce the wealth tax. We do have wealth tax that are triggered by different, events. Like for example, CGT is triggered when you dispose your asset, donation when you dispose your assets, but wealth tax is just going to be a once-off that comes in, which is not going to be sustainable for us, and that's the reason why they're taking time to get it into our law. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for unpacking us the impact on the taxpayers and the bracket creep issue. And then, Dr. Chuma, you patiently waited for your turn. And you taking us back with the helicopter view, geopolitical risks. We alluded a little bit of people taking away some things that we had in the past, new partners pitching up. But it is a volatile environment we're currently with. And what would be the impact for that from the budget side?
Good morning. Thank you. It is a great pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. When one looks at the global economy, there are a number of issues that are occurring worldwide that impact on our economy and in line with our budget. If one looks at what is happening currently in the US in terms of trade wars that are emerging, we have seen lately the US has imposed tariffs on a number of products like your aluminum, steel that comes from Canada, Mexico, the EU. So what does that imply for us? If there is these trade wars, what happens is that there is global economic uncertainty. If there is global economic uncertainty, it implies that confidence also it declines, and ultimately it impacts on investments. And also if these economies globally, we have seen lately the IMF figures that have been released that globally the economy is likely to grow at around 3.3 in the next coming years. So what does that imply is that if a country like China or the US are not performing well in terms of economic growth, it affects us as South Africa, because if you look at China and the US, these are our main trading partners in terms of exports and imports. We export a lot to them. So if these countries are not performing well, it implies that our economy will remain trapped in a low growth trajectory or low growth path for quite some time, because we're not able to export to them. There is less demand of what we produce. So what it implies is that it affects our revenues going forward. So we still have got this problem to say, going forward, if there is no stability at a global level, it implies that we'll still be facing these problems of saying, where will we get more revenues going forward? So there is a need perhaps for a situation whereby countries get to some agreement, and avoid these trade wars. Because what it does is that we have got protectionism mechanisms that are being rolled out. There is this issue of nationalism or inward looking by a number of these countries, which is not good for economic growth. So it's something that as a country we will be facing in the next coming number of years, and I don't see that ending. During President Donald Trump's first term, there were these tariffs. Some countries retaliated, like when we have seen lately with what China has done, and Canada, they've retaliated with tariffs. So it implies that we will have a problem going forward. And then also beyond that, as a country, we have benefited quite a lot in terms of AGOA. I've heard the previous speakers talking about AGOA earlier on. So with the incoming of this administration, there have been discussions around reviewing the extent at which South Africa could continuously benefit from AGOA. This has enabled our automotive sector and our agricultural products to be exported to the US at duty free. So what does this mean going forward if we were to lose out on AGOA? I've had a number of debates around this. And this has got implications in terms of our economic growth, because I think in terms of what we export, it's in excess of $4 billion US dollars that we export to the US. So if we were to lose out on AGOA, it implies that we are likely to have some companies or some companies and industries struggling to find new markets where they can send or redirect their exports. Because if we don't benefit from AGOA, it means our products will be taxed. There will be tariffs that will be imposed on our products, making them uncompetitive. So in the long run, you might find US customers that have been demanding our cars and our agricultural products, they will look into other markets to source those products. And a number of studies have been done. I looked at one study that was done by the Brooklyn Institution that was looking at the broader implications of this on South Africa. It's one of his findings was to say we are likely to lose out in terms of exports around 2.7%. And in terms of economic growth, unemployment, because what it implies is a number of these companies, not only those that export there, those that are part of the value chain, they are also likely to lose out. So it's something that the country needs to think about, to say, how do we mitigate these types of risk? Beyond that, we have got issues of climate change. You know, we have seen how South Africa has been impacted by climate change, issues of droughts, heat, and floods lately. And when I looked at the budget, the allocation that is there towards disaster management, it's minimal. So the question is, how, as a country, are we able to mitigate this type of crisis? We know that as a country, we have adopted what we call it a just energy transition plan or framework, which says we intend to move towards renewables and less fossil fuels, and we had a number of countries that made commitments in terms of funds that they will contribute into that to assist us to fund that just energy transition program. One of those countries was the US. But lately, we have heard that the US has pulled out because of the Trump administration does not believe in climate change. So it will affect issues of climate finance. You know, we have seen in the last couple of years, as they went to a number of these COP discussions, they have struggled with issues of climate finance. So it's something that as a country will affect us. And the question is, how will we finance our just energy transition framework or plan going forward to ensure that we're able to deal with some of these climate change risks? So it's some of those issues that we need to look at. So issues of peace around the world, it's something that is quite helpful. as some of my colleagues have mentioned, the issue around DRC, you would want to have peace within SADC, so that if you are talking about regional integration, there is peace. It's easy for us to sell our products or to trade with other member states within the region, as well as in Africa as abroad. We are seeing that there are a number of wars that are emerging in Sudan, South Sudan, lately. So all these things will have implications on growth and implications on in terms of the Africa Free Trade Agreement that is already there out. How will that benefit us as a country? So when I looked at the budget broadly beyond issues of geopolitical risk, it was to say, looking at the National Development Plan, because this is our overarching document, that is supposed to guide issues of planning. How is that aligned with budgets? So bringing budgets with plans, it's another issue that I thought it is missing, because at this point in time we don't have what we call it a medium-term strategic plan that has not been finalized. It will have helped us to say, as National Treasury is making these allocations, this is the kind of plan that is guiding that. So it's some of the issues that we need to look at, because if you look at the National Development Plan, it talks about issues of inclusive growth. It talks about dealing with poverty, unemployment, and inequality. But if you look at the plan, if you look at the current budget, does it speaks to these developmental challenges? I thought we were still far off. I understand that the tax base it's minimal, but how do we ensure that this tax base is broadened? It's around issues of promoting growth. How do you promote growth with this kind of a budget? It's another problematic issue. We have got an economy that has got higher concentration. Economic concentration in a number of sectors. There is minimal competition. What does this budget say is around issues of entrepreneurship, SMMEs? Is this budget ensuring that no one is left behind? Is this budget ensuring that people who have got skills and with skills are being are actively participating within the economy? So these are some of the issues that I feel the budget did not deal with adequately. So these are the issues that perhaps as this budget is being discussed in a number of platforms or in these various committees, it's issues around efficiency, it's issues of trade-off and prioritization. Government has struggled around issues of prioritization, issues of trade-offs. Which programs does government have to let them go, and which programs does government needs to invest more on those? It's a difficult issue. If one looks at the G20 in terms of the priorities of South Africa, it's around issues of inclusive growth, industrialization, artificial intelligence, issues around social protection. If one talks about issues of industrialization, there is a discussion around critical minerals. What are we saying as a country around this issue of critical minerals? Are we talking about exporting unprocessed minerals, or are we talking about mineral beneficiation? And what kind of mineral beneficiation are we talking about? Because the National Development Plan, it talks about selective mineral beneficiation. Why selective mineral beneficiation? You are taking into account as a country, we have got energy crisis, we have got unreliable energy supply, we have got unreliable water supply. So you can't beneficiate everything. So these are some of the things that as a country we need to deal with. Issues of skills. I looked at the budget. When I looked at the allocations to TVETs and community colleges, it's minimal. So what does it mean going forward? How do we deal with this unemployment that currently exists? And one of the colleagues talked about issues of the sectors that contributed in the last quarter in terms of economic growth, agriculture, we have got some of these labor-intensive industries that we as a country were failing to ensure that they drive economic growth. These labor-intensive industries will help to absorb this reserve army of unskilled labor force. If you talk about a sector like construction, the textile sector, these are some of the areas that we need to look at, and whether government is prioritizing those sectors is another issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think the broad conversation has set the scene. I'm going to ask one or two questions, and I'm going to perhaps dedicate it to an individual, but I want to open the floor. Anybody can respond to that as well. And then I'm going to open the floor from your side, so please start prepping your questions for that. And I want to give the panel just a head up to say, I want us to end the day with something positive. So we have a big challenges, but we've got a brilliant country and a positive. So just think about it in the back of your mind that if you were to sit down with the minister and say, this is good, what would that be? But also, what would be your one tip to the minister to say, if we can address that? So put yourselves in his shoes for a moment instead of just saying, we've got such a lot to do. So I'm giving you a little bit of a heads up. So first of all, I just want to talk, and it does dovetail to exactly where this last speaker ended up that said about the prioritization versus trade-off. And it almost touches to what you also mentioned in your discussion or your introduction, was to say there were other expenditure pressures not addressed. So we have a lot of issues. So how do you almost do that trade-off? The minister made the decision to say he's looking at the income side this year. On the expenditure side, there is no tightening of the belt. We look at it from a personal finance side. We would always say to people, but you need to touch on your expenditure side. So it's almost, has he given up? That he says that's not working. That was the strategy for the last few years. It's not working. Is he taking his foot off the pedal and now taxing us to say he can't solve the problem on the one side? He's taking out the debt stability, a whole issue you spoke about. So I would like to hear the panel's view on, it's almost a shift in policy that is now done, and should we be concerned?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think it's a very good question, and it's something that actually went unnoticed. So with all the noise around VAT, this budget in particular departed from the previous strategy, where the focus was on, we need to tighten our belt, there's limited resources, tax revenue didn't come in as we had previously expected. It also mentioned specifically in the budget that unlike in previous years, there will be no cut to expenditure. And that deals with the issue around building a capable state. So there's definitely a change around thinking here that we need to build a capable state, we need to grow the economy, and hence there was an allocation towards infrastructure. There was also an allocation towards frontline services. So that was quite deliberate in this budget, that we need to increase the amount that we are allocating to education, to the health department, to correctional services. But unfortunately for the minister is that he is faced with limited resources. And I also just want to touch on the point that the co-panelist made around growth. At the core of South Africa's problem is a growth problem. If we just grow this economy, we'll get more people employed, we'll be collecting more in tax revenue, and we can then spend it accordingly, right? But because the economy is not growing, we are faced every year, we are faced with limited resources and growing expenditure needs. But I think what is then unfortunate is there is so much focus on the National Treasury and the Reserve Bank to say, your policies are not driving growth. But that is just a fraction of what's supposed to be driving growth. Where is the Department of Trade and Industry in all these discussions? Because they're supposed to be driving growth from an industry perspective to say, what type of policies do we have? Why is it hindering growth in the private sector? What more can we do? What incentives do we then need to put out to grow the industry, because that's where growth is supposed to come from. So at the heart of South Africa's problem is a growth issue, and that's what we need to solve for. And I'm not convinced that that solution comes from National Treasury or it comes from the Reserve Bank. It is a greater issue, and I think this also deals with, this government of the government of national unity. What are the goals and priorities? What exactly do they want to achieve? How is that reflected in the budget? Because if you think about it, this budget, it's still last year's budget. It was plastered here, it was plastered there. What we need is it's a whole an overhaul of the budget to say we've moved to, from a one-party state to a multi-party state, and is this budget reflective of this multi-party state? And I'm not convinced that it is.
Any one of you that'd like to add to that comment? On the shift in budget or the focus on growth?
Thank you. I would like to agree with the previous panelists that we need to grow our economy. So we have had an economy that has been trapped in a low growth trajectory since 2014. We have not managed to grow beyond 2%. So what is it that we need to do as a country to drive economic growth? I've seen that there have been allocations around infrastructure, but is there capacity to roll out those massive infrastructure? We have seen what has happened with the previous big infrastructure projects like your Medupi, Kusile. It's something that we need to ensure that government with the private sector develop those kind of skills of managing these huge infrastructure projects and looking at how do these big, massive infrastructure projects benefit our local economy? Do we have the components to roll out these massive infrastructure projects, or we need to import a whole lot of those stuff? So it's something that we need to look at, and if we look at are we able to promote small business or entrepreneurship around issues of ensuring that beyond issues of finance, market access of these SMMEs, them being able to access these value chains, because there is so much concentration in a number of these sectors. Some will struggle to sell their products within the retail space. From my engagements with some of these SMMEs when I was at the National Planning Commission, they'll say they struggle to sell their products. So it's some of these issues. And how do we revitalize other sectors, like your agriculture sector? How do you make it attractive to young people? So that it's able to help us to address issues of unemployment and our rural economies. It's something that we need to look at, and whether our industrial policy is it helping us to grow our economy, or we need to say to DTIC, maybe you need to focus on a selective sectors, because the resources that we have at your disposal is limited, but you are spread widely and the impact is minimal. So a number of reviews needs to be undertaken in a number of these programs that are existing within government, a number of incentives that government has given to some of these industries to drive economic growth. It's what needs to be looked at to ensure that our economy grows. And how do we deal with issues of concentration in a number of sectors? I've seen that a number of these structural reforms in a way are attempting to deal with that in the port space, in the rail space, water sector. But there are other sectors, where there's still concentration, that if we deal with those economic concentration, we'll be able to deal with, we'll have a competitive economy which is able to drive economic growth. Like if one were to look at, if you look at the exporters, our exporters, it's big players, So with big players or with big companies, there is minimal incentives for them to be innovative, issues of technology and the like. So we need to deal with issues of productivity as well, innovation within our economy, skills, and then we'll be able to drive economic growth going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm coming from the angle of policy coordination between policy institutions here. From what I have seen from the current budget, I don't think there is policy coordination between the fiscal policy and the monetary policy authorities. Because when the monetary policy authority is on the trajectory of lowering rates, and the National Treasury is coming up with a vet to say, let it be inflationary consequences in the economy. That tells you there's a policy disconnect between the two institutions. Remember, currently, the household debt to disposable income, I think, is around 60%. That's a big value. That is a very big value. So it was a time when there should be policy coordination and they should be allowing households to recover. And the debt cost as it is now, that is debt service cost to the disposable income, is around 9%. That's a huge percentage. So we should be having a conversation between National Treasury and the South African Reserve Bank coming together and saying financing decisions are also a critical part of getting growth in the economy. Because if the financing part of it now, if we look at the monetary policy cycle, the cutting cycle is very short. Very short. But now, as we know from economic theory, that there's asymmetric effects. When inflation picks up, we know that interest rates are going to go up very quickly. And there's always that resistance from financial institutions, whereby they're reluctant to cut interest rates in an interest cutting cycle. They'll find excuses to say there's an excuse here. Let them also they bring in the issue of risk, that when they're cutting, there's a risk in the economy. They try to maintain profitability. That is passed through what they call the markup. So the pass-through of interest rate, that is the cut in the actual interest rate, that's passed through to the consumers. It tends to be very small. The financial institutions, they tend to have another way of making sure that the weighted risk, that is the actual interest rate, remains higher so that they remain profitable for a long time going forward. So for those who are able to have the access to data on the households and the corporates, you'll find that the weighted household lending rates, they tend to be more stickier. This thing even happened during the recession in 2008 when I was still at the Reserve Bank, 2009, somewhere there. People, monetary policy makers were saying they did a big job by cutting interest rates from about 11 to about 5.5. When we looked at the weighted series, that was a different case. The weighted interest rate at that time for the households, it was around close to 12%, and the repo rate was around 5. So where is this risk coming from? And the people don't look at that risk aspect. They tend to look at where is the policy, the repo rate at. But the actual lending rate, that is the weight of interest rates on all your debt-related. The debt that you have, it might be credit card, it might be maybe the mortgage repayment rate, it's always higher. So the other thing here, which I want to speak about, is in the policy coordination here, I know that there's a committee, what they call microeconomic committee between the Reserve Bank and the National Treasury. But we don't think that the committee has got the privilege to discuss this before the budget. Because it's information that they should have together and map the way forward to say financing decisions play a bigger role, and that is the role of the Reserve Bank that determines the trajectory of the interest rates. Because if that is not done, you cannot go and source funding and there's no interest rate that you have to pay. that should be determined by the monetary policy first, that we want to keep rates lower for a long time, irrespective of whether the shocks are transitory or what. And also remember, in the past, we used to know that monetary policy is a demand management tool, but it's not supposed to be reacting to supply side shock. That changed. When oil prices, that is supply side shock, monetary policy reacted very aggressively. We know monetary policy is a demand management tool. The cycle is up and down. When the output gap is high, they raise. When the output gap is a negative, which means demand related pressures in the economy are very minimal, they tend to lower. But now, because of the oily supply side shock, we haven't really benefited from the cut. We haven't really benefited from the cut. I feel that the households, which play a bigger role in driving the GDP growth, they are still constrained and they need a bigger relief. Whether the grant of the increase in the grant of maybe of 130, that plays a bigger role, I don't think so. I don't think so. Whether the use of zero-rated goods is really beneficial, I doubt, even though the other one say it. Because remember, these zero-rated goods, they use inputs in the production process. There is an indirect effect from the VAT that is going to pass through there. And those who are said to be benefiting from zero-rated goods, they are still going to pay a much higher price than before. For example, take the eggs. The eggs, for them to be there, farmers need to buy maize. And that maize has got VAT included. So that zero-rated goods, I don't really buy that story most of the time. Because if you look at the input of production in those goods, they are going to be raised because of VAT, and those who are supposed to benefit, they are not going to benefit as much as expected. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think I agree with the last point on the zero rating. If they're going to zero rate everything, then the government won't have money. I think the point that I want to raise in response to your question is that the tax revenue quality is a product of good economic growth. Without economic growth, we're not going to get the tax collection that you require. So I agree with the previous speakers that we will require good economic growth. So my view is that we also require a tax policy that will stimulate economic growth without hampering or without negatively affecting essential public service. And the other point that I want to raise is that to improve voluntary compliance as well, we need to have accountability on our public spending as well. We need to review the quality of the spending. I'm glad to note in the budget that the government has realized that increasing taxes is not going to improve any collection going forward. We need to improve on infrastructure that will stimulate growth. But the 1 trillion that they mentioned in the budget, if it's not reviewed if there's no accountability as to where the money is going, then we're gonna still sit in the same position again, where the money has disappeared, and now we need to chase. Or we need to look for the type of assets that the money was meant to build. So the public perception of how the money is spent, it's important in improving collections. If you know that your money is being spent on healthcare, road, infrastructure, taxpayers will be willingly to pay tax. There won't be any incentive to avoid tax. But the challenges that we currently have is that there is a lot of money that is going to healthcare, education, and security. But majority of the taxpayers, they have to fund those expenditure, or they have to access private education, they have to access private healthcare, and they have to have private securities in their house, and that creates despondent when it comes to tax. If all those things can be catered for, people will be willing to pay tax. If you look at countries with higher tax to GDP or low tax gap, all those things has been ticked off. They've got good quality healthcare, they've got good security, and there's also movement, there's good transport system. So the road infrastructure, port infrastructure is at the best. So I think that's the point that I wanted to raise.
No, thank you so much. I agree. We need efficient infrastructure in the form of transportation. Yes, in social services like health, if our hospitals were, rather public hospitals were reliable, I can tell you that almost 90% of the people here would leave these medical aids. We don't like them, but we don't like them because they are costly, but we are weighing the two, the services which one could get in the public hospital and the one we can get in the private hospital. But we don't like them, the price we are paying. It's exaggerated. It's I think there is AI involved in those prices because we could, yeah, but we hope we will reach there. I think my learned friends were more on economic growth. We need both. We need both. You will remember that in the era of former President Thabo Mbeki, we had an economic growth, a good economic growth, but our people were poor. We're very poor. Our people are better off now, even though we don't have the growth. But we need to balance the two. We cannot be talking about economic growth as if it's not a function of improving the living standard of people. Economic growth is fine, its numbers they will be looking good. But for example, Unisa staff members' salaries are very good in numbers, but after medical aid deductions, we cry, don't we? So we must balance the two, but politically, because I'm representing the workers, rather the union, I think we must get used to the fact that the GNU was by invitation by the African National Congress to everyone. So if the current partners, especially the Democratic Alliance, is not willing or supportive of this budget, they are free to pack their bags and go. There are other parties waiting to enter the state. But knowing how it is, they will just do what we call rhetoric in public so that they can be relevant. But they will never leave those packs they've been criticizing ANC for, especially in the executive. They will never leave those ministries. They will still be in the executive, but just making noise to confuse us. It's not for the first time we have been increasing VAT. They complained, but they are still there. So let's understand that what I would say that the rhetoric they will do on media is not the true reflection of what they are feeling in their hearts. They just want to be seen doing something, but they are not going to leave that GNU. They are going to implement the Bila, was it Bila Act? They are going to implement the expropriation. They are going to implement everything, but they just want to satisfy I think a segment of their members who are likely to join Freedom Front or AfriForum. So those members who are leaning towards AfriForum or Solidarity and Freedom Front, they just want to satisfy them. But in reality, I doubt if they will leave the GNU. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, I think it's the question of population growth versus economic growth versus all these challenging numbers. And we alluded to the discussion in terms of AGOA. I got some numbers, whether it's right or wrong, that's the economist's numbers. If we lose AGOA, it's going to make a 0.2% on our GDP, which doesn't sound a lot to your point that you initially said. But we're working from a 0.6% growth. So if you lose 0.2%, it's massive. So we need to think of how we almost then have to do 3 times the output that we're currently delivering to get to that 1.9% going from 0.0. So I think it's that tension that the minister is sitting with to say, if I take this thing, what do I leave, what do I go? And in the same way, when we looked at the discussion about the bracket creep, my crude numbers, for what it's worth, is for the last 2 years, we got 111,000 new taxpayers at the lowest tax bracket that because of the bracket creep. There's 250,000 new taxpayers just moved up. But we've got high inequality in the country, in the world. So we won that prize. So all of us in this room is the top 10% of South Africans from the taxpayers we're talking about. So I think it's important that we always have to remember the context in which these discussions are made and that we understand where we're going. So that is again back to the question of hiring person, upping in personal income tax, that whole discussion, we said they took VAT. The commissioner is on record that he said the previous 1% VAT increase didn't achieve the objectives that it was set out to do, so we do it again. We had the discussion about chickens, the drumstick. Didn't we learn from COVID when you could buy this shoe, but you can't buy that shirt? So we complicate the matters. It's almost feeling like self-owned goals that we're doing. But returning then to this Lavert curve that talks about pushing taxes up. The narrative is if we tax higher, we're going to lose taxpayers. They're going to either immigrate or they're going to stop paying tax. But in a country with such high unemployment, high inequality, would the people really go? Would they stay? Or is there, almost like your point of the GNE, isn't there somebody else that would take the position to say, at least if I get a job, even if I take a lot of taxes? So how true is that threat of a more exodus on the tax system? And combined with that question, I want to relate back to the tax morality that you've touched on as well. The narrative that's going is to say SARS has got much better, take it for granted. Is it the right thing to give them more money? Is that the best use of our money if we don't trust the government to spend the money that SARS collects to the best of our benefit? So it's almost that combination of we're paying too much taxes, we're not getting enough for our taxes. So where does it leave us in that conversation of how do we address these tensions that the minister is struggling with? Any takers on that question, whether we may lose taxpayers, we are taxed at our brink. What is your position on that?
So to just touch on that, when I was at the National Treasury, we actually did, one of the studies that we did was around, there's a concept of tax bunching, and I'm pretty sure that the tax specialist here will talk on it. But essentially what it says is that in an economy, because remember we have people that work that, taxes are deducted immediately because they work for an institution. But in there, we also need to remember that there's self-employed people, and then there's also small business corporations as well. And the data actually shows that self-employed people can then actually under declare their liabilities or they over declare their liabilities and under declare their income when there's a jump in the tax burden. So the evidence is there, and the discussion is that if you do increase the tax burden, then you further encourage that behavior. So it's not necessarily that because of the high tax burden people are leaving. I mean, if we look at PIT rates in advanced economies, they're way higher than what the PIT rates that we are currently paying. But it's the type of behavior that you then incentivizing. The issue around capacitating SARS, I think that for me, we definitely need to give SARS more money to increase capacity and skills in order to reduce the leakages that are already there in the system. Because if SARS is able to collect as much as they should be collecting, then the tax burden amongst us is a lot more distributed and doesn't have to continue increasing. The problem the minister needs to keep increasing tax rates is because not everybody is paying their fair share. So if we can, clamp down on those leakages, it will certainly assist. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the on issue of capacitating SARS, that one has to be done. We are living in a world which is moving. Technology is changing every day. SARS, if it's going to rely on systems that are old, they will lose a lot of money. They will lose collections. So they need to keep up. And we're living in a world where transactions are becoming, the volume of transactions is becoming high. For a SARS auditor to come and audit effectively, they will need technology. So that's the reason why they are investing a lot in technology. They need to appoint data analyst, IT specialist. So for them to get those, they need money. They need funding. And it's a good investment in that it will help to uncover or to get more money that is already not in the system, because our tax base it's very narrow. If we look at the economic activities that is happening, there are people who are participating in the economy at a higher level, but they're not within the tax net. And then this is purely because the systems currently they don't talk to each other. You can easily go and buy a multi-million house, but the SARS won't even know about it anyway. There are people who are driving big cars, but SARS doesn't have them on their net. So if there's a linkage on the system, where the system is, if you easily walk into a dealer, SARS need to be able to pick it up somewhere on the system, because currently the government systems are not linked. You mentioned the point that Treasury and Reserve Bank are not talking. This is an example of what needs to what we need to avoid. So investment in SARS, it's important, and going forward, as we know, human intervention is just going to be lessened over time. Technology is what is going to AI is what is going to help in solving a lot of our problems. Thanks.
Anyone else like to answer?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I tend to agree with the previous speakers that you need to improve capacity of SARS, but to ensure that more revenues are being collected. But it needs to go beyond that. I think it's how citizens, how we hold our various people that are within government in terms of spending. How do we hold them accountable? As we're talking about issues of challenges in terms of revenues, we have other municipalities or other departments that fail to spend what have been allocated. We have funds that have been returned to Treasury each year. So it's how do we deal with issues of state capacity, a capable state, issues of governance, issues of corruption, across all the three spheres of government. In the main, at a local sphere, because this is where implementation occurs. So to the people at a municipal level have the capacity to spend the funds that are being allocated in the main infrastructure around issues of water, electricity. because if we are not able to address those issues at that local sphere, we're not able to um, to attract investments. So it's issues of state capacity that I feel needs to be done, and as well as ensuring that there is accountability. The HG from time to time come up with reports, make findings. Is there a mechanism to ensure that these findings are being addressed at all the three spheres of government? I think there is minimal. So if the issues of trust deficit are not addressed, you will find that people will not be incentivized or not feel the need to pay taxes. So if those issues are addressed, issues of efficiencies, it will help us a great deal going forward in terms of collecting more revenues. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So do we ask Mr. Musk to come home and do a government efficiency program in South Africa? I'm not sure. All right. I'm going to open the floor now for some questions. So yes, I'm Dr. Ndlovu.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's still morning. Good morning, colleagues. I do have two questions. It's regarding the zero rating of goods, and I do share similar comments, Dr. Ndou. Good afternoon, colleagues. I do have two questions regarding the zero rating of goods, and I do share your sentiments, Dr. Ndou. I was wondering about the same thing. When you reduce or when you zero rate the goods, does the benefit actually go to the poor people, or eventually is the shareholders who benefit from that reduction in the rate? Because when you look at the VAT, when we started with very few goods that were zero rated. But now we're sitting with in excess of 20 items that are zero rated. Where does that benefit go? Have we done a study to see if indeed the poor people benefit from the zero rating? And my second question is again on the zero rating of goods. I know that VAT impacts the poor much more than the rich. But if you look in absolute terms, it is the rich that actually spend more. They buy more. Have you done an analysis to be able to see if we didn't have a basket of zero rated goods, how much will we be able to collect from that, and will that not be redistributed back to the poor? Thank you.
I'm going to take two more, and then we're going to give the panel time to respond. You were first, and then, sir, I saw you at the back, you're number 3.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Isaac Munyela from Mayor Academy, Manyaji Isaac Academy. I'm also an alumni in TMS. I just want to make, I think, 2 comments, especially when we come into the hierarchy of our state, national, provincial, and local government. Most of the activities are executed at the municipal levels, but the officials that we have in the municipalities, I can assure you more than 60% of them, they don't have the capacity to run those activities. Because in most cases, they are the political cater deployment. Some of them, they didn't go to tertiary institution to study about the local government. So I studied Bachelor of Administration Management. I majored with Public Administration Management, Development Management Studies, and Local Government Administration. Recently, I think you have seen in Namahal or Phalaborwa, there was a fire there, and then there were issues of going up and down. And then some of them may find that one colleague called, I was in Polokwane, and then he called and then to say, but do we have the capacity in the municipalities? Because as a municipality, you must able to have, according to your jurisdiction, you must able to have your stakeholders, companies that have got the capacity. When you have this kind of incident, so you know who to contact first if you are running out of the capacity also based on the resources. So some of the officials, they don't have those capacity to execute based on the qualification. You may find that a ward councillor doesn't know even his jurisdictions. There are certain services that you request them from the district municipality, the upper municipality that is above you. They are not falling under the jurisdiction of the local government. So you must request the services from the district, and then the district release it to the local, and then the local disseminate it to the communities. Sometimes you promise the communities to say, I'll offer water. But we find that the decision to provide water doesn't come from the local. It comes from the district. And then you can't go back to the community and then to tell them that you lied to them. You told them something that is not taken from your council. So those are some of the elements that if we can try to stimulate and encourage capacity, even the political parties, people that they deploy, they must check based on qualification and skills and capacity. So those are some of the elements that I just wanted to share. Thank you very much.
No, thanks, Program Director, and thanks to your brilliant panelists around you. My name is Madoda Pomoy. I'm from the office of Nehau. It's a simple one for me. It's a strategic question. I consider Unisa to be a key strategic point for the country, given its size and shape. Unisa harbors the best of the best experts globally. I want to ask a question. If we do sit in any of the government structures, critical structures like you can mention them, treasury, trade and industry, small and medium business, so that if we sit in these structures, we can contribute in the policy framework that will shape up the very same budget. I think we are going to contribute research-driven inputs ourselves as an institution of higher learning, as opposed us assembling like this and come up with inputs that are more of a critique than a constructive criticism. That's why I want to know if we sit in any of these fora on a formal partnership with the institutions of higher learning. I want us, as we interrogate this budget, to juxtapose it with the National Development Plan. And why the National Development Plan? It's because some of the targets and objectives within the National Development Plan are cascaded to the institutions of higher learning. We are expected to deliver a certain number of the PhDs. These are the PhDs that we believe they are going to contribute in the economic development. These are the PhDs that we believe they will contribute to do a dent in the high rate of unemployment. As an institution of higher learning, we must contribute in the issues that are currently a pain in the country. For an example, the high rate of unemployment that we have, are we able to disaggregate it to say those who fail to complete matric, those dropouts, how many they were? I mean, the minister all the time when he mentions the results for matric, he will give us those statistics. So the unemployment that we face, how much of it comes from those who hardly have the matric certificate? And how much of that unemployment that we have that comes from those who hold the postgraduate degrees or certificates. I think as an institution of higher learning, that is the information that will be research driven, that we can contribute at a policy framework so that the budget itself is informed by those realities. I think if we were to come from that angle, like I said, we are a strategic institution ourselves. It would assist a lot. We are currently faced with executive orders that are cutting aid, the aid that is assisting the very same institutions of higher learning to improve and ensure the quality research. Given the current budget, to what extent are we able now, under the all cost cutting measures that we are faced with, even internationally, that we will be able to achieve our own national development goals, which will then shape the issues of economic growth, that will then shape the issues of unemployment. Thank you very much. I just wanted to find out that strategic partnership that you might have as an institution. Thank you very much, Chair.
I'm going to stop, Jim. I'm going to take a second round of questions so that we just respond to this and then we can take a second round. So first of all, Dr. Ndlovu's questions about the VAT and the zero rating. So it's my understanding, and my apologies if I understood it incorrectly, but it's almost who benefits from the zero rate, but it's almost we need zero rate or don't we need zero rate. So it's a combination. I'm going to start with you, putting you on the spot, but hopefully any one of the rest of the panel can also answer.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. It's meant to benefit the poor. But human behavior it is very strange. Without laws, humans don't behave. So currently there is no law that prevents anyone from charging any price that they want to charge, especially on items that are zero rated. Without regulations, the government cannot control, cannot retain that benefit to the consumer, which is the final person that needs to pay the VAT. So currently, it's just an issue of pricing. So there's no law that prevents the owners of the business from taking advantage of the zero rating. We have seen with the at some point, the white bread was zero rated, brown bread was not zero rated. At some point, there was no difference between the prices between the two, but what white bread was zero rated. So I think the challenge with zero rating is that the benefit may end up in the profit of the business owners, not the ultimate beneficiary. This is purely because in an unregulated industry, where prices are not regulated, anyone can charge any price. For example, most of the poor people, they buy from what you call spaza shops. There, anyone can charge any price. There is no indication of anything being zero rated or not zero rated. I think that's the challenge that we have. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, you have the first part. The second part related to, that when you zero rate, it means that the fiscals lose a certain portion of revenue. Have you done an analysis to see how much revenue do we lose from zero rating, and can it be redistributed back to the poor?
Yeah, no, personally, I have not done that research, and I've not seen that being reflected on the tax statistics. But like what Mr. Ndo indicated, that even items where we say that they are zero rated, the inputs are generally taxable. For example, if you look at road transport fees are generally exempt from VAT. But the servicing of those vehicles, the tires that they're put on those vehicles, there is VAT on that. And as you know, business people, they always pass cost to the consumer. So even if we say that there's no VAT in the transportation of passengers, but there will be indirect VAT on the inputs. So to answer your question, I've not seen a research that has been done, but there's not much I can tell you that this not that state is losing, because on the inputs there is VAT that is being charged. The only argument is it would be that they pay VAT at the supply rate, and they won't be able to claim it as an input because they will be in the exempt. But if you look at the zero rating, so if you are supplying zero rating goods, you will be able to claim your inputs, which is a loss. That I think that's what you are alluding to, which is a loss to the state, but you still not pay VAT on your output. Yeah, I've not looked at the stat, but it could be interesting to look at the.
The stats are actually in the budget document. If you go to Annexure B, it's table 2B. Treasury does have estimates around how much foregone revenue they actually lose from the zero-rated items. And for 2022-23 fiscal year, they put that at about 34 billion, essentially. So that's the amount of revenue according to National Treasury's estimates. The other question I wanted to answer was around the pass-through of the zero-rated VAT to consumers. It's actually one of the things that National Treasury flagged in this budget. I'm not too sure whether it was in this budget, but in the now the budget that never was, they did put a note in there to say that they do worry that the benefit may not all completely be given to the intended recipients. And they made an example with sanitary pads. You'd recall that the last time they increased VAT, one of the things that they did was to also remove sanitary pads being rated. And they noticed that the price didn't decrease by the amount that with removing the VAT. So not all of it is passed through, honestly, and I think it speaks to what the co-panelists were saying around it's around human behavior. If it's not regulated, if enforcement is not there, then you leave it to human behavior.
Thank you very much. And then I think it was more a comment, if I understood you correctly. I think we have discussed it a little bit of state capacity or capability, and I think it's across all tiers. So I do think it's something we've addressed. And then circling back to your question in terms of Unisa's positioning, I'm going to spare my panelists to give that and take the liberty of asking my boss if he can respond to it when he does his closing review. So yes, I think Unisa is playing a lot of strategic positionings. I think that's where the catalytic niche areas is coming through. But I do take the point. But as I said, I don't think my panel will have the liberty to be able to answer on behalf of Unisa. The second round of questions, where are you now? Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for the lovely discussion. However, when I was following your discussion, it seemed like you were focusing on growth. Yes, South Africa economy has experienced sluggish growth over the past decade, averaging around 1.2. Of course, it's a problem. While much of the discussion is focused on expanding the economic pie, the pressing issue, which I think is distribution. As South Africa ranks amongst the most unequal societies globally, I think it's the most unequal, if I'm not mistaken, with a Gini coefficient of about 0.63. In light of this, how does the budget address inequality in the country? And what will be your advice to the finance minister on tackling this challenge? And also, does it really speak to how those who are economically excluded participate in the economy? Because social grants really, they are not helping. I think we have been issuing out checks, and if you are to give somebody 350 or 700 rand, surely speaking, you are not including that person. You are merely perpetuating their poverty because they feel like, okay, I get something, but you can only help them by including them in the economy. they need to participate in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the interesting discussion. So it was mentioned that there is some money that has been put aside that will be used to capacitate SARS for them to be able to efficiently collect revenue. So my question now is government doing anything to capacitate municipalities as well for them to be able to collect own revenue, because they have instruments that they can be able to use to collect own revenue. And I think if they were to be able to efficiently use those instruments, then they would avail some funds for the national government, because the purpose of giving them those instruments was to give them some level of financial independence. So my question is government doing enough to capacitate municipalities so that they can be able to collect revenue? And then my second question is on whether, okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, just one question. The issue of growth versus social welfare in the form of employment. I think there has been a number of questions that have been raised about that. Perhaps as researchers, we must revisit the idea of growth being a proxy for employment, if it still exists. So that's the first thing. I think it's related. I think Dr. Mtogozis, you mentioned that to address the issue of labor-intensive sectors, we need to protect them. Are you suggesting we should introduce protectionist policies, whether export, import duties on these sectors?
Thank you very much. I have to be very quick. Number one, when you look at commentaries around this budget, the media and various people who are commenting on this, they talk of the necessity of substantial expenditure cuts. So as a panel, do you think over and above the contingency reserve, which was reduced by 3 billion, and also the digitalization of services from the Home Affairs reduced by 3.5 billion. Do you think there are other areas where there could have been substantial expenditure reductions? Number two, the medical tax, medical tax credit.
Let's squeeze one in, huh? Okay. Firstly, it's just to deal with the question that was talking about distribution. Without growth, you can't embark on redistribution. So we need to grow our economy so that we have more resources that could be channeled towards a number of these social safety nets. You know, grants. People have talked about introduction of the basic income grant, but without an economy that is growing at higher rates, you won't be able to roll out those basic income grant and have this SRD being a permanent grant. So you need to grow your economy, and then you'll have more resources to be channeled towards that. Government has tried in a number of ways to deal with issues of poverty and inequality since 1994. The period between 2003, 2008, thereabout, if you look at the data in terms of poverty, through a number of these social safety nets that have been introduced, your social wage, government managed to reduce poverty by a significant amount. it started to go up beyond 2011, 2012. So there are a number of intervention mechanisms that could be rolled out. But the challenge now, there is limited fiscal space to maneuver for government to roll out a number of these interventions to deal with inequality and poverty. So there are a number of what you call transformational policies that have been rolled out by government to try to deal with, to address issues of ownership patterns, within the economy. Some of them have been successful, some of them have not been successful. So it's how do we relook at some of these policies? If you look at TTIC, they have a number of set-asides that they've done. There are certain sectors that are designated for local manufacturing, to say certain components in this sector needs to be sourced local in a ways to promote SMMEs and eventually dealing with issues of inequality and poverty. So it's some of those interventions. And then there was the other. Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask a second question in terms of the capacity of the municipalities? Who's willing to take that question to say, are we investing enough in the municipalities? We indicated that there's a lack of skills. We capacitating SARS. What do we do about the municipalities?
Yeah, I think you will.
Yeah, so having spent some time in government, there is what we call it the National School of Government and the Public Service Commission. So working with the local sphere with COGTA, there are a number of initiatives or programs that have been rolled out to capacitate officials at a local sphere of government to be able to roll out these services. But in terms of managing the operational issues, the national sphere it can't impose certain things at a local sphere to say you need to do certain things. I'll give an example, like the equity shares that are being given by National Treasury to a local sphere. National Treasury cannot go to a local sphere to say, where did you spend this money? They are governed by their own regulations, So it's an issue of it's difficult to say government can follow, national spheres can follow up in terms of spendings in those municipalities. But there are a number of initiatives that deals with issues of skills to ensure that there is proper service delivered. So it's an issue of saying, as the National Development Plan talk about active citizenry. What are the citizens saying in their local sphere in terms of service delivery? Are they holding the municipal officials, the councillors there accountable to say we need services, we need some level of capable people to roll out a number of these initiatives? Because this issue should not be an issue of government alone. It should involve a lot of stakeholders to ensure that issues of service delivery are addressed. Thank you.
The third question was in terms of the labor situation, labor policies. Should we protect? Should we open it up? Anyone wants to talk on that?
So when I mentioned labor-intensive industries, I was talking about industries like your agriculture, construction. I wasn't saying you need to protect them, because it's difficult if we start to say we're ring-fencing those. You might promote inefficiencies that exist. What I was saying, it's an issue of having incentives in those areas, to ensure that those industries are able to thrive. The other issue, it could be the issue about sector designation, or if within the agriculture space you want to promote agro-processing, you can say we would want to set aside certain companies, certain industries within that space. But how do you do those issues of local designation? You need to do a demand supply study to ensure that before you designate this sector, there is capacity to meet the demands that are there. So it's not necessarily imposing protectionism. With local designation, there were conditionalities as well to say you benefit from local designation on condition that you export. So there will be a number of these conditionalities that are accompanying these incentives that are being provided by government. Thank you.
Yeah, I can take that one. So on the expenditure side, I think what most people are generally complaining about it's the wastage and the inefficiency of spending. And if you also look at the bloated cabinet as well, right? So people are saying before you increase the tax burden, can you look at efficiencies within government? Where can you cut? Year after year, we have the Auditor General telling us about wasteful and fruitless expenditure. But what are the consequences? Who's holding those various departments and municipalities accountable? And for me, this goes back to the point I made earlier that there's so much focus on National Treasury and the Reserve Bank, and the problems we have actually go beyond just the budget. And so we need to hold other states, other organs of the state accountable. So the AG tells us about wasteful expenditure, but what has she done? I remember a couple of years ago, she was given the powers to actually go to personally hold the CFOs at municipalities accountable for the wasteful expenditure. What is the progress on that? So for me, the issue of wasteful expenditure is we first need to improve efficiencies, reduce the leakages, because what we're essentially just doing now is that we have this bucket of water that has holes and we keep trying to fill it up and it's not filling up because we haven't closed the holes. So it's not necessarily going to various departments and cutting, but making sure that we are a lot more efficient in terms of what we're spending. And then the issue as well around inequality, to the core panelist point around, we need growth. You can't even talk about reducing inequality if you don't have growth. And the issue around, when Mbeki was in power, there was growth, but people were not well off. Unemployment was still, I think at the time, it reached a low of 24%, right? So yes, people were not well off, but people at least had the means. They were not relying on a 350 grant, right? We can't expect people to live on a 350 grant, but we should also not be promoting a behavior where people are reliant on grant. The states need to grow the economy. They need to make sure that industry is able to grow so that more people can join the labor market and fend for themselves, right? So that's the one aspect. And the other aspect is, some of the problems we have are not likely not going to be solved through our generation. And it speaks to generational wealth building. And this now comes to individually. So over and above what government is doing, what are we personally doing on a day-to-day basis? How am I, as Mpo, trying to build the wealth of the next generation in my family? So it's also that issue as well, that it can't just be, our problems can't be solved by government or politicians. It's also individual responsibilities as well.
Thank you very much. And yes, on that note, we have ran over time quite a lot, so I'm going to leave the panel as is. I'm going to thank you very much for the time, your effort this morning. You came to visit us here at our big main campus. Thank you very much. I think it was a quite insightful discussion. I think there's 320 questions left that we can ask still, but I know you're also looking forward to lunch. So thank you very much, and then I'm going to hand over to my dean to do the closing thanks. Thank you very much.
Prof. de Klerk mentioned that there's still 350 questions, and now you are leaving. Yeah. One would start by saying, wow. And when my name was put on the program, they said to me, you are going to do a vote of thanks. But then when our facilitator here is busy facilitating, then she keeps on mentioning that I will address it when I do the closing remarks. I'm confused now. But yeah, let me start by greeting, by saying dumelang inhlekane, good afternoon. Ndimadekwane. Oh, Ndimasiar. Yeah, you.
You are majority in the panel. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay.
And you butcher our language.
But if you don't try, you won't make mistakes. At least I tried and I learned. I will never repeat that mistake again. Goeie middag, ne? Okay. Hey, yeah. Sawubona. Hey, yeah. Let me end there. But I know that good afternoon will also cover all of us. So, yeah, let me not waste time, colleagues. But what I want to say is that these kind of discussions, they empower us. You will agree with me. And as far as we do have this kind of an event every year, I noticed that there are improvements in each and every year when we have this kind of events. And let me, I just want to get an indication from the House here as to how many of us are happy about the budget. Okay, I've had questions and yeah, but how many of us are happy? Please raise your hand up. You won't be held accountable for that. And then how many are not happy? Wow. And then not sure? No, you can't be nowhere. Huh? Either you are unsure or happy or unhappy. Okay. But yeah, thanks to the panel for such an enriching discussions and points that you have mentioned. And I think I'm complicating my role here. I was just given this platform to come and say thank you. So I should have just saved time and energy and just said thank you and then sit down. But I think it wouldn't do any justice because there's a lot that has been said here. I'm not going to open up or try to write a thesis here on what has been said, but let me say To our facilitator, Prof. De Klerk, you conducted this discussion very well. The leading questions that you've asked, they empowered us, and I think that's why they've chosen you to facilitate this with the expertise that you have. Thank you very much. Please don't clap hands. We will clap hands at the end. Ne? And then the scene setter, me Paul Mulopiani, you've set a very high standard. When you set the scene, I was sitting there, and then I was like, wow, this is now made so complicated. I wasn't sure even if other panel members would actually be able to reach to that level, but you've set it at a very high level, and yeah, thank you so much. And I was taken up by the comment on your how we would want to service our debt, the amount of money that we would use to service our debt, which at the same time, the income that we would want to raise after even servicing our debt, we would have to go back again and look for other debts. So thank you very much for that. Dr. Ndou, your comment on ESCOM, non-skilled municipality managers and so forth. I think those are our take home. Obviously, I won't do justice to everything that colleagues you have said, but I'm just noting there and there. And by so saying is that all your comments, you managed to reach that level. So if I were to do a performance, an IPMS, I will all give you a 5. Or in terms of Unisa, 5 is the maximum. You would get a bonus, yes. And yeah, and Dr. Haji, you managed to also took me where I was and put me in front, and yeah, you are also worried about the 0.5% increase in tax, and then your comments on inequality of the panel. Yeah, we will look at it. That's a point that we must also consider. And yes, as the institution, EE is one of our mandate. Transformation is one of our mandate. Looking at what Mr. Magadani, the uncertainty of the approval of the budget. I've also noted that even though the budget was presented, it was not retracted, but there are still uncertainty on whether it will go through or not. Maybe it's a matter of, because majority of you are also not satisfied about it. So it means if they were to say, they would give us that opportunity to say, do you approve the budget? It means it wouldn't go through. So I'm happy that we were not going to be given that opportunity. Yeah, colleagues, there's a lot here. There are risks that were mentioned that they were not covered by the budget. From Dr. Chuma, you mentioned the issue of climate changes, and I also thought about that, whether this budget would cover that before the budget, looking at the floods and all these unfortunate events that are happening, that are taking place, and also the infrastructure which is now dilapidated. We have water issues. We have roads with potholes. It's worse now. So yeah, I'm not sure if those are also covered in our budget. Guys, did I leave anyone behind? Yeah, I think, and then colleagues, there's one thing also that I want to respond to. I think that was the mandate that I was given by the facilitator to respond to that question of how do we as the institution partake into these important activities of the country, leading also to improving the continent itself. I must say, we in the College of Accounting Sciences, we have our professor, Prof. Lawrence Erasmus, who is part of the Fiscal Commission. He served for the previous 5 years, and then last year his term was also extended with another 5 years, meaning that he is doing a very good work. A day before yesterday, we had a meeting organized by the South African Commerce Deans Association, which the two colleges, SAMS and CARES, you can see we are twins. We are also members of that association. We had a meeting which we were invited by the Minister of Department of Small Business, Minister Ndabeni, where we were invited to partake into the activities leading to the G20, and then also looking at the programs on entrepreneurship. And I think one of our panel members also mentioned that for us to be able to create those job opportunities, small business and enterprises are a way to go. And Prof. de Klerk, you are also part of the initiation or initiative on the development of the Engaged Scholarship Program, the Tax Clinic, which will also be contributing a lot to this kind of discussions. And I must also say that also in the Department of Tax, the chair of Department of Taxation, Dr. Mphahlele Ndlovu, she is also involved in various media platforms where she is being interviewed and giving some commentations on the issue around tax. So I must say, Mr. Bomoy, our expertise is actually being used, not underused actually. And then, but I must also say, while I was sitting down there and you were giving this kind of comment, I was also thinking that this kind of discussions might be important if maybe we can do them maybe before the budget, maybe do a pre-budget discussions, but not a post-budget, because now we are doing a post-mortem. So if we can do a pre-budget, do some predictions and have invite these media platforms and be exposed. I think we can influence most of these decisions that are being taken. And also one of our panel members spoke about the policy that when these budgets are being thought of, sometimes policy is not even taken into account. There are misalignment with other policies, and actually the plans that we want to implement, like the NDP and so forth. Colleagues, I would be making a very huge mistake if I cannot also recognize and thank our project leader from SAMS, Prof. Robinson. Those who don't know her, she's sitting here in front. I know that you spend sleepless nights together with your team, the planning team from SAMS and College of Accounting Sciences, the marketing teams. So thank you very much for that. And we are also blessed, colleagues, by other guests from outside and supported by our chair of departments from both colleges, SAMS and CAS. And then we also have seen the media team here. Otherwise, you won't be seeing me here on the TV. So our media team here also to be appreciated. Then our program directors, you are doing a very good job. If I were to market for you, and then I would say no, let's have you as program directors in all the events of the institution, even outside, and then we will derive a third stream income out of you. So yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nchwanti and me Nesongoze. So colleagues, our academics also from both colleges, administrative staff, and everyone who attended this, the planners. I just want to make sure, colleagues, and be careful that I don't leave anyone behind. But colleagues, can we give everyone whom I've mentioned and anyone else whom I didn't mention, including myself, a round of applause? Okay, so I think by so saying, I don't have any announcements. They didn't tell me any announcement except that I will hand over the token of appreciation to our panel members, and then I will ask the planners to come and assist me here. So yeah, I will request Prof. Robinson, please come and assist me with handing off the gifts to our panelists here. And yeah, I must say thank you very much. And please, next year again, as a pre-budget discussions. Thank you so much, colleagues. Last round of applause.
Colleagues, thank you so much for joining us. We can all go for lunch now. Thank you very much.
Yes, with the group.